Sometimes life hands you situations that really test your character moments when you have to decide what kind of person you're going to be, no matter what the cost. I want to tell you about one of those moments. It was a flight from Atlanta to Los Angeles, and Marcus Carter, the CEO of Carter Airlines, found himself in the middle of a confrontation that was about to become a whole lot bigger than just a flight. It started off like any other day. Marcus had been working hard for months, expanding his airline, growing it into something that was almost a household name in the country. He was proud of what he'd built, no doubt about that. But as he was getting ready to board his flight, heading out to LA for a well-deserved break with his family, he didn't know what was about to happen. As Marcus strolled through the airport, he was in his usual confident stride. He wasn't flaunting it didn't need to, but when you've built something like Carter Airlines from the ground up, you carry yourself a little differently. People notice you. Even if they don't know who you are, there's just this quiet aura about you that says you've made it. Marcus was excited to see his sister, Tanya, and her 3 kids Zoe, Elijah, and Jordan who were flying with him that day. They hadn't seen each other in months. Tanya was a single mom, working as a hospital administrator, and between her schedule and Marcus's, family time was a rare luxury. But today, they were going to LA to relax for a few days, and for Marcus, it was the first real break he'd had in years. Tanya wasn't used to first class. Honestly, she'd never flown first class before. But Marcus wouldn't have it any other way. His family was flying first class, just like he did, even if she tried to talk him out of it. That's the way it was with Marcus. Wanted his family to experience the best, and he made it happen. So, there they were, getting ready to board, all excited. The gate agent scanned their tickets, and when she saw where they were sitting, she looked at them with a little surprise in her eyes. "Oh, you're in our platinum first-class cabin," she said. "You'll be boarding first." Tanya's eyes widened. She'd never seen anything like it. The kids were in awe of the fancy lounge and the snacks. They'd never experienced this level of comfort before. Jordan, the teenager, was trying to play it cool, but even he couldn't hide his excitement. But then, as the boarding process continued, the energy shifted. A man walked past Tanya and her kids. He was an older guy, Richard Whitfield, a real estate developer who had built one of the biggest property firms in the Southeast. Marcus noticed him right away. He was always tuned in to who was flying with him, especially in first class. But this guy? There was something about him that Marcus didn't like. Richard sat behind Tanya's family. He was scanning through his phone, but every time Elijah or Zoe laughed, he would glance up, visibly annoyed. He sighed loudly, as if their very presence was disturbing his peace. At first, Marcus thought it was just a coincidence, but then Richard pressed the button for a flight attendant. He wasn't complaining about the food or the seating. No, this was something else entirely. Richard told the attendant, in a tone that was just a little too sharp, that the kids were too loud for first class. He wanted to know if they could be moved. He even suggested they must have been upgraded due to overbooking, implying they didn't belong there. You could feel the tension rising in the cabin. For Marcus, this wasn't just a passenger complaint, it was something much deeper. It was the same kind of feeling he had when, as a kid, he wasn't allowed to swim in the community pool because the manager said only residents and their guests could use it. It was the same feeling he got when he walked into a boardroom and people mistook him for the janitor instead of the CEO. This wasn't just about kids being noisy. It was about something deeper, something personal. Marcus could feel the old anger bubbling up. He looked at Richard, sitting behind his sister's family, dismissing them without a second thought. Marcus wasn't that scared kid anymore, though. He was the CEO. This was his airline, and Richard Whitfield wasn't going to get away with this kind of behavior or on his watch. So Marcus stood up, quietly, but with a firm purpose. He walked toward Richard, who didn't notice him at first. When he did, the man froze. "Is there a problem here, sir?" Marcus asked, his voice calm, but sharp. Richard didn't recognize him at first, and when he did, his face flushed with embarrassment. "What's the issue?" Marcus asked again, this time louder, making sure everyone around heard him. "You're uncomfortable with the children?" Richard tried to brush it off, saying it wasn't personal. But Marcus could hear it in his tone. It was personal. He didn't think black kids like his family belonged in first class. "Those children," Marcus said, his voice steady now, "they're my family. And I'll tell you right now, they have every right to be here. Just like you." You could hear a pin drop. The rest of the passengers were glued to the exchange. Richard sputtered, trying to save face. "You expect me to believe that," he said, still in disbelief. Marcus didn't flinch. "I'm Marcus Carter. I own this airline," he said simply. "And those kids you're complaining about? They're my family, and they belong here." Richard's face went through a few expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally, that awkward smile that people give when they've been caught in a lie. But Marcus wasn't done. "I designed this cabin myself," he continued, "to be a place where people could travel with dignity. And you, sir, you're the one who's disrupting it." Richard tried to dismiss him again, but Marcus wouldn't let it go. He wasn't going to let Richard or anyone make his family feel like they didn't belong. Not on his plane, not in his world. And that's when it really hit the fan. Marcus didn't expect Richard's next move. By the time they were in the air, the tension in first class was palpable. Richard had already made a call. He was threatening to pull out of a huge real estate deal that would have been a game-changer for Marcus's airline. The Terminal East Projecta du La 50 million development was on the line. Marcus sat there, in his seat, phone buzzing nonstop. He was the CEO. He had to stay calm. But this wasn't just business. It was personal. This was his family, his values, and his company's reputation. Could he really let this slide just to protect a business deal? Would he compromise his integrity for the sake of one contract? Marcus thought about it for a second. No, he wouldn't. Some things were worth more than money. As the plane continued its flight, Marcus had to make a decision. He had no idea what the fallout would be, but one thing was clear: couldn't let this slide. He stood up. "You'll be removed from this flight when we land," he told Richard. And just like that, he did it. He made the call that would forever change not just his airline, but his legacy. The entire plane was watching. Marcus's calm, unwavering stance resonated with the passengers. Some looked uncomfortable, but many more were quietly cheering him on. There was even a moment when one of the flight attendants, a young black man named Darius, spoke up, saying, "What you did, sir, it's something we've all wanted to do. But we were scared. You showed us we don't have to be. And you know what? That's what made it all worth it." The real cost of standing up for what's right isn't about losing a business deal. It's about teaching your family, your employees, and everyone who's watching that they don't have to shrink themselves to make others comfortable. The story didn't end there. In fact, it was only the beginning. The media picked up the story, and the world began to talk. There were people who didn't understand, sure, but there were more people who saw Marcus's actions for what they were: real courage. Marcus didn't just teach his family a lesson that day. He taught all of us something. And as he sat with his family, holding his nephew's hand, he knew that some battles are worth fighting, even if it costs you everything. So let me ask you, what would you have done in Marcus's position? Would you have stood up for your family and your values, no matter the cost? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's talk about what it means to stand up against discrimination. And if you believe that dignity is something worth fighting for, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of real courage and integrity.